Hi everyone, welcome to Dakota's Kitchen. I'm Dakota and I'm going to be starting this little cozy corner of the internet where I'll be sharing my sourdough journey, my favorite things to bake, and some of our favorite recipes and simple meals that just bring everybody to the table. I'm not a professional chef or professional baker or anything like that. I'm a stay-at-home mom in my kitchen just learning one loaf, one cupcake, or one recipe at a time. So follow along and let's get to making something. Our first recipe today is going to be making a regular loaf of sourdough bread. I'm going to start off by using a large glass mixing bowl and a scale. You do need a scale for this recipe as it is measured in grams. First, we're going to put our mixing bowl on the scale and zero it out. And we're going to add 150 grams of active sourdough starter. There's 150 grams of active sourdough starter. Now we're going to add 350 grams of water. I am using bottled water. If you have filtered water, go ahead and use filtered water. Okay, there's 350 grams of water. We're going to use a whisk. You can use a whisk like this. You can use a regular whisk. You can use a fork. It really does not matter. I am going to use this whisk. We're going to whisk this well until we get a nice milky and foamy mixture. There's going to be chunks of your starter in there, and that's totally fine. You can use a mixer for this recipe. I just like to use my hands and a whisk. Okay, as you can see, we have a nice milky and really super foamy mixture here. Now we're going to add some flour and salt. We're gonna add the flour first. We need 500 grams of bread flour. I am using Bob's Red Mill artisan bread flour. I need more flour. Ha. Now we're gonna add 8 grams of salt. I like to create like a little well in here. It's completely unnecessary. It's just what I like to do. So I'm gonna add in 8 grams of salt. I'm using Redmond real salt, the pink Himalayan salt. I want to be careful not to end up adding too much. So that's why I'm measuring kind of slow here, because I don't want my bread to end up being too salty. There we go, there's 8 grams right there. And then what I like to do is I like to just go straight in with my hands and mix this. Mixing in the salt with the flour on top really well, and then starting to incorporate it into my water and starter mixture. This is very messy, so if you have like an issue with textures, this part probably is not for you. You could wear gloves, or you can also use your mixer with a dough hook. There's nothing wrong with that. I just prefer to use my hands. So my method is kind of squeezing and lifting and twisting at the same time. And then also trying to go in and get the stuff off the sides as I go to make sure that everything is well incorporated. If you're having trouble getting things off the sides, you can always go in with a flexible bench scraper. I don't have one of those, so I'm just gonna use like a flexible silicone knife. I'm gonna go ahead and cover our dough with either plastic wrap, or you can also use a damp towel. I'm gonna use a damp towel, and this is just so that our dough doesn't dry out while it's resting. So I'm gonna go ahead and cover this, and then I'm gonna let this sit for 1 hour, and we'll come back and do some stretch and folds. I'm gonna go ahead and set this over here. And while that's resting, we can go ahead and feed our sourdough. This is my discard jar. I'm keeping all my discard right now because I will use it to make bagels and pizza dough. I'm starting with a clean, fresh jar, and I'm gonna add 20 grams of starter into my jar. About 20 grams of starter there, and I feed at a 1 to 5 to 5 ratio, so now I'm going to use 100 grams of water. Okay, we did 100 grams of water. Now we're going to do 100 grams of flour. We got both of those, so now we're going to give this a really good mix. And the consistency that we're looking for is about like a really thick pancake batter. I'll mix this super well. I'm using a wooden knife, like a wooden butter knife that my dad made me, and it just works absolutely perfect for mixing my sourdough. Thanks, Dad. Here is what our consistency looks like. Not sure if you can see that super well, but I'll bring it up here, and you can see it's very thick, like pancake batter, like a very thick pancake batter. And then we're going to cover it with a loose fitting lid. So I have these wide mouth wooden lids from Ball, and they do come with a silicone seal, but you can take it off. So I took that off, and that's what I use for my lids on these wide mouth jars. And then I like to use a rubber band and put it around my jar. And that will just kind of tell me where I started out with. So now we have some discard here. I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of this discard into my discard jar. I use the same lid for my discard, and I stick it in the fridge, and that's where it lives until I'm ready to use it. Of course, you can also just use a regular jar lid. That works just as well. This is just what I like to use. I think it's pretty. It's just what my preference. All right, our dough has been resting for about an hour, so we're going to go ahead and start doing our first set of stretch and folds. I like to start this with wet hands because then the mixture will not stick to your hands as bad. So I just pull away from each side of the bowl and stretch up and fold it back in on itself. Now I'm going to do this side. Done our first set of stretch and folds. I'm going to cover this back up with the damp tea towel and let this sit for another 30 minutes, and then we'll come in and do another set of stretch and folds. Another 30 minutes has gone by, so we're going to do our second set of stretch and folds. Starting with wet hands, I'm going to pull it away from the sides again and straight up until I don't feel like it can stretch anymore. I don't want to rip the dough. I'm just stretching it. Okay, here's what we're looking like after that second set of stretch and folds. We're going to cover this with the damp towel again and let it sit for 30 more minutes, and then we'll do our last set of stretch and folds. All right, that last 30 minutes is up. It's time to do our last set of stretch and folds. Here's what it looks like after that 30 minutes. I'm gonna go wet my hands and we'll get started on the last set. Got wet hands and we're just gonna start anywhere here. So I'm just gonna pull it away from the side, stretch straight up and into itself. Straight up and in. At this point, your dough should be getting pretty strong. And again, we don't wanna rip the dough. We just wanna stretch it until it can't stretch anymore. I'm gonna do it a couple more times. You can see that my dough has gotten very strong. And then for this last piece, for this last one, I'm gonna do a coil fold. So I'm gonna pick it up from the bottom and it's gonna be folding into itself like that. I'm gonna set it down. I'm gonna pinch the sides just a little bit, make sure it's a nice little ball. And here's what it looks like right now. So now we're gonna put our damp towel back on top and we're gonna let this rise until it's at least doubled in size and it's ready to shape into a ball and bake. Sometimes this can take 6 hours. It sometimes can take 8 hours. Really just depends on the temperature of your house, the humidity, all kinds of different factors. But I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. It'll have some bubbles on top. It'll be super, super jiggly and it will peel away from the sides of the bowls very easily. So we'll just let that sit and we'll come back when it's ready. It is officially super late at night, but this is ready to shape. See how jiggly it is? And it's got all these bubbles on top, and when I go to touch it, my fingers aren't sticking. I'm gonna go ahead and dump this out onto a floured surface. Okay, now I'm just gonna stretch this out into a nice little rectangle, just like that. And I'm gonna fold the bottom half into the middle and the top half on top of, or into the middle as well. And I'm gonna turn it this way and I'm going to roll it up nice and tight while being super gentle. And then I'm just gonna move in candy cane motions, pushing it up and then pulling it back towards myself to create tension in my dough. I don't want to break my surface tension, so I'm just being very, very gentle here. And that's looking wonderful. This is a banneton. If you don't have one, you can use any bowl. You can put a paper towel in your bowl. You can flour the bowl and stick it in there as well. You can use anything. I just have this banneton specifically for my bread. And I am gonna flour this just a little bit. I'm gonna knock it around the bowl. I'm gonna top. Like that. And then we're just gonna flip it over and stick it smooth side down into the bowl. Now that it's in the bowl, I'm gonna take the sides and just hug them to each other, just like this. And that just kind of helps seal it up just a little bit more. All right, I'm gonna stick a little bit more flour on here. And then I'm gonna take some plastic wrap and I'm gonna cover this. And then I'm gonna stick this in the fridge overnight. I could bake it right now. However, it is very, very late. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick this in the fridge and I'm gonna bake it first thing in the morning. It is the next morning. We left the sourdough bread in the fridge overnight. This is what it's looking like in the Banneton currently. Still very, very wobbly, and it smells amazing. So we're gonna go ahead and crank up our oven to 450 degrees, and I'm going to put my Dutch oven in the oven to preheat along with it so that it can also preheat for about 30 to 45 minutes, because I want to make sure that it is completely up to temperature when we put this sourdough loaf in the oven. So let's go grab the Dutch oven and get going. All right, I've got my Dutch oven here. I'm gonna stick this in the oven and go ahead and turn up the temperature. Okay, now we'll just go ahead and let that preheat for about 30 minutes. And then we will take our dough out of the Banneton, we'll score it and stick it in the oven. So what I'm gonna do first is grab some parchment paper. I prefer to use parchment paper. You can also use a silicone bread belt if you have one of those and want to use that. This is just what I prefer to use. I'm just going to get a little square like that. And we'll take a little bit of flour and just dust the bottom. Now we're going to dump our loaf onto the parchment paper. Beautiful. This loaf is looking absolutely gorgeous. So I'm going to sprinkle flour on top of this now. And then I'm gonna spread it around nice and even, just like that. And then using a bread loom, I'm going to cut a deep score in it to help it steam and rise. I'm gonna cut one in the side here. There we go. And I want to be real confident about this because I really want to get a good oven spring. And then I'm gonna put a cute little design in here. I think I'm gonna do a nice little couple of wheat stalks. Score in there. We've got a cute little design, and now I'm gonna put it into the Dutch oven and get it in the oven. Don't forget to put your gloves back on when you go to put the lid back on. So I'm just gonna set this right in there, just like so. Got my gloves on. I'm gonna put the lid back on and stick it in the oven for 25 minutes with the lid on, and then 25 minutes with the lid off. Okay, we'll set that timer for 25 minutes, and then we'll take the lid off and bake it for another 25. This is the part where I'm like, ooh, is this gonna be a good loaf? Because You never know what it looks like when the lid is on, so I always look forward to taking the lid off and seeing what my oven spring looks like. All right, it has been 25 minutes, so I am going to take the lid off. Oh, looking gorgeous. And we're gonna stick it back in and we'll bake it for another 25. All right, our timer just went off, so it's time to take this out of the oven. Oh my gosh. Wow. Look at how beautiful that looks. Right away, I'm gonna take it out of the Dutch oven and put it on a cooling rack. This is what we are looking like fresh out of the oven. It looks beautiful. Our design turned out so cute. Absolutely love it. The ear, we got a really great oven spring. The ear looks really good. This is called the ear right here, where it comes up. It looks gorgeous. Yeah. We're gonna let this cool all the way and then we'll cut into it and see what we have. This is completely cooled, so let's give it a listen. Oh my. That sounds incredible. Let's cut it open and see what it looks like on the inside. This part always kind of breaks my heart because my design is just so beautiful. But it's okay. I also really like seeing what it looks like on the inside. Oh my gosh. That looks incredible. Oh, it feels amazing. So soft. Oh my gosh. I cannot wait to try a bite of this. In fact, I think I'm gonna cut myself a piece off right now. And I'm just gonna cut a little piece off the end because I don't want a huge piece. This looks incredible. It is so soft. Okay, here's the first bite. This is amazing. Okay, now I'm gonna put both my halves into this little bag. I got these off Amazon. You can get like 25 of them for $5 to $7. They're really, really cost effective. We have our one half into a bag. I may actually give this half away to one of my family members, or I might just eat it for myself. I'm not 100% sure how long this loaf is gonna last in my house. But thank you so much for watching the whole video. Please hit the thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more simple home recipes. And thanks for coming to my kitchen.